Welcome to Live, Love, and Marry Wiser, where our mission is in our name. Proverbs 4:7 says, Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and in all you're getting, get understanding. We pray, plan, and prepare every episode for you to access wisdom for your life and relationships through all of the hosts and guests who join us weekly. If you've been with us, you know that we are in our hiatus season, and we will be showing you our afterwise conversations with the guests that we've had on the show in our season 4. I'm so excited about this particular afterwise conversation. It's the conversation that happens after the conversation. And we decided to start recording those a couple of seasons ago because the conversations got so good after we hit end broadcast. And so we are now going to be sharing those conversations with you during our month-long break from our live episodes. Today, we're going to be talking, we're going to show you the conversation that happened after our Girl Dad episode with Earnest James. But before we do that, I would love for you to like, comment, share, subscribe. We're still going to be engaged with you during the break. And then after we return, we have some fabulous new guests that we're going to be bringing to help you live wiser, love wiser, and marry wiser. So please hit the like button. That's the thumbs up button. Subscribe, share this information, and then go back and binge watch the whole season or even all 4 seasons if you have missed out on that. You haven't caught all of those episodes. We would love for you to do that. And I'm not going to make you miss out on the updates. So we are going to now have. Well, interestingly enough, my relationship coach, Pastor Leggett, who's been on the show twice already this season 4 that just ended last week, he actually got married this past Sunday, yesterday. And so he is on his honeymoon. And so we are taking a break from our coaching until he returns from that. But I'm excited because I am continuing to grow and learn about relationships, about how I should carry myself as a woman who is seeking to be married to the man that God has for her, preparing myself for that journey. So I'm excited about what I'm going to learn when he returns and we continue our journey. We are halfway through. It's a 12-week coaching program. And then, of course, he's your coach for life because that's just how he is. But I'm excited to share more with you and just to see how my love life, my dating life, and hopefully my married life develops as I learn and grow in this area. So that is. So I just want to set up this Afterwise video. We had a conversation with Earnest James, and he is a podcast, Girl Dad podcast, as well as a Deal to Heal podcast, where he came on and he talked about being a girl dad, but not just, he wrote a book called The Core 4, and we discussed the book and some of the principles in the book. Well, after the conversation on the air, we had a backstage conversation with the host, and he shared some more tidbits. We talked about how he recognized the core 4 and how he recognized the poor 4, he calls them. Like, if you don't get those core 4 values, then what are basically the counterfeit values that you do start to get, and what does that look like, and how do you repair that? How do you respond to that so that you can avoid those inevitable traits if you are growing up without a father. And so we want to jump into that conversation now and have you join. It's not that long, but there's a lot of great information that we want to share with you. So we hope that you enjoyed that conversation. Back in because they've been so good. You know, we talk after with all the guests, and then we actually have some other people that's going to join us. We let the people from the who are watching join us if they want to be a part of it. Thank you so much. That was a fantastic conversation, Ernest. That was just rich. That was rich. I just loved it, and I really could have talked to you for a lot longer than that.
I'm trying to get back to having those conversations, because again, that's how I started. Even with the podcast and all of that, I started as a guest because I was talking about fatherless daughters, and then as I was building the podcast, we're going on into our 4th season. I kind of got away from it because I was building that, and then I started building the speaking career and all of that. So I kind of got away from it. And so that's why now I'm pushing it more. And I'm like, you know what? Let me put it back out there. Let me get back in touch, with that original mission to input in the girl dad community. And it's hard. It's hard. When I first started, like, I would have these conversations, and especially with people who may have be doing their own, fatherless daughter event or whatever, and we'll have these conversations. They're like, "Oh, Ernest, you're great. I love talking to you." Then I'm like, "Well, can I, be a part of your whatever you're doing?" "Oh, no, you can't do that." It was like you got to stop at the door, and it's like it's women only. And I always say, well, you're in this position because of a man. So maybe it will take a man to help you heal, And so I just say, I'd be like Jesus, just knocking at the door, like, "Oh, will you let me in?" You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to get back, like I said, get back into speaking about it more. And I was working on, I got to even get back to things I was working on, because I was working on sort of like a coaching program. And then I was even thought about, and I started it, I got to get back to it, writing a workshop called How to Support My Fatherless Spouse, and just for the husbands to be able to say, okay, what are the things that I have to be mindful of? We're dealing with, my wife who may not have had her father in her life to instill in her, certain values, or even teach her how to react in certain things. Again, if I had something like that with my second marriage, maybe we would have probably still been together, even though we're the best of friends. And now she likes to tell everybody we're better now than we were when we were married. So I'm like, okay, I'll take it.
Okay. I want to ask you about if you can just talk a little bit about what are those things, those those things that we see, because these other things, affirmation, love, and affection. What's the first one? I know it. Guidance.
Yeah,
and
guidance.
Protection. When those aren't in place, what are the things that you saw that you may not have known? Oh, it's because of this, but that kind of led you here.
Yeah, and sometimes I'm asked that question. Sometimes it's like, okay, what did you see in these women? What traits did you see in these women? That you are dating them to make it to the point that you recognize it as being effects of fatherless. And I always say, well, at that really, I didn't notice it, because every woman I ever dated was a fatherless daughter. So it was normal, So the different things was normal to me until I got to the space where I recognized it and I started, doing the work. But so when we talk about I talk about the core four, then I also talk about briefly about the poor four. And so the poor four is the opposite of the core four, because just by no fault of her own, but by not having the example of what to look for, she will attract, to a certain extent, a certain type of guy. And even if she's not attracting him, like she's not looking for him, unfortunately, there are fillers and there are predators who can see when there's a void missing, right? So I always give this story about my cousin growing up, and forgive the terminology, but he always liked hood rats, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what he liked. And he can spot him a mile away. We can be in the mall, we walking through the mall, he'd be like, her right there. And they can be like down the hall or whatever. But when they came into close contact, he'll say something. And the craziest thing, he'll say the craziest, to me, the most ignorant thing that he can say. And then be like, hey, and then he next you know, he talked to him a little bit. Now he got their phone number. You know what I'm saying? But he could see it. He never met him before, but he can see it from a distance. And so
Wow.
there are guys that have that same ability to be able to see where the voids are and the brokenness, even if you don't think you're putting it off, they
Mm.
know and they'll prey on that. And so when we
Wow.
talk about the poor for, is those values that you may attract or those men that come into your life may have because you didn't necessarily have the court for. And so instead of finding someone uh whose court for is guidance, you may attract someone who's controlling. So now they're not guiding you, they're controlling you.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have a say so. You don't have a voice to speak, of what it is that you want. No, you're going to go this way, and he comes with that,
Right.
mindset and controlling the narrative. And then when we talk about love and affection, again, I talk about how from a father, this is how you feel love. This is how I express love to you, but now you have someone who's showing you things in a different way, but then telling you that it's love, talking to you any kind of way, but then say, I love you afterwards,
Mm.
treating you any kind of way, but then say, I love you afterwards. Like, no, that it don't match up, but because of, again, not having the example, so to speak, you're like, oh, again, like even in my situation, it was normal. The dysfunction and things that I had to deal with or we dealt with in relationships that prior to was because they were normal to me. I didn't know no different, and so she didn't know any different either. And so because we didn't have that, so you kind of just flowing with that. And so when we talk about affirmation, again, it's the opposite. Instead of finding someone who to affirm you, you may attract a poor four, which is a guy who talks down to you, who instead of lifting you up, now he's talking down to you, and instead of telling you who you are, he's telling you who you're not. You're not good enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not smart enough. And then the last one, protection. Instead of finding someone who to protect you, now you found someone who may take advantage of you, who may abuse you physically, verbally, emotionally. So instead of protecting you, they're actually the one that's doing the harm.
You need protection
And
from
so yes,
Mhm.
exactly. And so unfortunately, like I said, a lot of times to no fault of her own, but just by not having the example of what, not only what to look for, but what not to look for, those men who can see the void and that's attracted to that, that's where the fillers come in to try to
Mhm.
take advantage of that and get what they want out of you.
And the thing that I appreciate about the way that you frame that is a lot of times when we talk about this and we talk about daddy issues and whatever, there's such a negative
Mm-hmm.
connotation and such a negative energy around that
Mm-hmm.
toward women. And of course, we know there are women who, they just are not nice or whatever. But in general, a lot of times it's like you said, she doesn't know what she's missing. So when someone presents with something that looks like what she wants,
Mm-hmm.
because the reason those are our core values is because it's what we need internal, like we're created needing that.
Yeah.
And so you can gravitate to the bad version of that versus the good version of that. And because you don't know, you get deep in it, and then it's like, oh, okay, wait a minute, something's not
Yeah.
right. But then how do you get out? Because it's sort of good, but then it's sort of not good, and
Mm-hmm.
it's almost never 100% bad. It's like, oh, it could even be 20% good, but just that 20% is enough to feel that thing inside of us that we desire. And so now we don't know how to get out of that without kind of help, without somebody that helps us
Mm-hmm.
out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
that's
you
why I
don't
say you have to find that person that's good for you, not just good to you.
Right,
Right.
right.
Because
Exactly.
they may be good to you in some instances. You know, unfortunately, a lot of fatherless women sometimes find themselves in relationships with married men. So he might be good to you. He might treat you well, but is he really good for you? Right? Is this situation really good for you? Is it benefiting you as your inner person? You know, yeah, he can take you on a date and give you money and all of these things, but on the inside, as a woman, do you really appreciate being second? You know what I mean? Do
Mhm,
you not? And I wouldn't even say being second, but do you really appreciate not being given the platform that you deserve? You
mhm,
know, making you uh, play the back seat to someone else, which obviously she should be getting those values. You know, like that belongs to her. That's not
Right,
your husband. But
right.
because he's good to you, sometimes we look past the point of saying, okay, but is he good for me? You know what I
right.
mean? And so that's why
Yeah.
I said being able to just ask yourself that sometimes, you know, can kind of
Mhm.
give you the answers that you want. You might not like the answer. You might not like it, but it'll be the answer that you need.
Renee?
Mm,
Yeah, when I was going through that, that phrase stuck, it kind of jumped out at me when it says that if she didn't get the core four, then by default and no fault of her own, she will gravitate towards the poor four,
Mhm.
right? I like it because it speaks to the fact that it's not always intentional,
Mhm.
yeah.
right, for her to gravitate towards this guy. But then my question, it leaves me questioning, how do you bust the through the default? Like, how do you avoid that? You know, for a woman who's like really trying to do right, who did not get that. um but before you answer that, let me just tell you what I tell myself when I was asking the question. For me, it's the relationship with God. Like Lorraine, when you brought it up, I mean, in my notes in your book, Ernest, I have got all through there. Because like when you were saying find a father figure, whether it be your father, your actual dad, your stepdad, your uncle, your pastor, your this, and then I put God in there
Mhm.
because I believe that it can have the same positive effect if you have that true
Yes.
relationship with God
Mhm.
and embrace him as your father, which is what I feel like I did. But don't get me wrong, that default situation still exists,
Right.
but the relationship with God keeps my good sense there.
Yeah.
Meaning, I don't like the way you're talking to me. That's not acceptable. I don't like this. This is not acceptable. I still care and am very mindful about how I carry myself, how I present myself. The fact that under any and all circumstances, you're not going to rob me of the love that I give, the kindness that I share, the demeanor that I carry with me, right? So you can come at me with your poor qualities, but
Mhm.
because of my relationship with God, who told me who I was, what you're bringing to me, I see it, I recognize it, but I feel like, you know, I have that God, that barrier that doesn't let that come in. Don't get me wrong, it came in and I had to work really hard to build it back up because I'm like, God, you did too much work in me for me
Mhm.
to let some, let me see what I say, Bobo or Nuck Nuck get in there and try to tear me down. Like absolutely not. God, you did a good work in me. And I want to rebuild that and let them do their thing. So that's what I say to myself.
Yeah.
What do you say?
So I agree with you 100%. So I would say if it's a three steps, you just name two of them, right? The first one will be your relationship with God, you know, because He's the only one outside of yourself who knows the inner you, who knows the real you,
Yeah.
right? And like He said in His word, which Lorraine spoke earlier, He already addresses you as the Father. Like, look, I'm your Father. You
Right.
know, I'm your father before your father knew you was a father, right? Because even in the word, he says, before you were entered into the world, I knew you, right? So
Mhm.
I've been your dad before
Yeah.
your dad knew, you know. So
Mhm.
that's first, right? And then the second one is you also said that you did the work too. You said, Lord, you done the work in me, but you put too much work in. So that comes back to getting that work yourself, doing that work of, okay, who am I? What do I need? Reading the books, right? So, but then the third one, I would say, find the male relationships that are safe, and I give a couple examples, but I'll just speak about in one person I know personally. Her dad was never in her life, right? But her pastor, she was younger, and her pastor, when she met her pastor, he took an affection to her, him and his wife, and they became her godparents. And so he began to fill that void, and to take that role as her father, or what he more like her. I say her father, but he was older, so it could be grandfather, however you want to say it. But he took that role into beginning to speak into her and pour into her and lift her up again, pouring those values into her. So there are men who, some are in position and in spaces that want to show up for you in that way, but I would definitely say, definitely be careful. Do the work on yourself first, because again, if you don't do the work on yourself first, then unknowingly you may be giving off those vibes, that the wrong man will see. But if you do the work on yourself and you're able to start showing up, heal, then the men that are meant to be in your life, that God will bring into your life, who are there only to deposit, not to take nothing from you, but only to deposit because they want the best for you, then that's where you get it. With, I would say, those 3 steps, those 3 things will be the thing that begin to lift you up out of that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. We gotta let him go. I know he's got to record.
Yeah, I'm looking at the time. I'm like, I got 10 minutes.
Thank you again, Ernest, so much. This has been fantastic. Welcome back. I hope that you enjoyed that conversation. We learned so much from him, and maybe we'll even have him back again to share some more with us. He talked about just getting a mentor or a father figure if you don't have a father in your life. And the question was asked, well, how do you avoid making those poor choices? And I just want to share with you from Proverbs, the book of wisdom in the Bible, a scripture that I think is really important when we're talking about, hey, maybe we haven't been set up the best way for making some of these relationship decisions, and we've unintendedly gotten these poor 4 characteristics versus the core 4 that we should have from a good father. What can we do? Well, I'd like to suggest to you Proverbs 11:14, where it says, where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. And one of the reasons that I even started this podcast is because I've spent so much time counseling so many single women and men, but mostly women, on poor relationship choices. And we understand that there are some of the impacts of not having a father or having a poor father, because some people have fathers who don't help them, actually don't invest in them to learn those traits that they need to make them strong and wise in their decision making around relationships, and then to attract someone who has those values as well. So we're not blaming anyone, but we're saying that as adults, we have choices to make. And so we can't use those things as excuses. And if we have good counselors, women in our circle, men in our circle, siblings, parents that we do trust, even if you don't have the father that you wanted, if you have a mother who's trustworthy and her opinion is valid, and you have friends around you who are Christian friends who give you good counsel, who are trying to live up to God's principles, guess what? You have a team of people that can help you make those wise decisions. This is not a decision that you should make on your own. I don't think at any point, no matter how healthy your father was in your relationship with your father, I don't think you should be making a decision for life as it relates to anything, but particularly marriage, on your own. The Bible says, where there is no counsel, the people fall. It wasn't talking about marriage, but it includes marriage. It was talking about all of the decisions that we make in our life. And so, in the multitude of counselors, if you trust them enough to be your friends, if you've chosen them to be in your life, why would you leave them out of the important decisions that you're making for your life, your love, and your marriage? I just want to leave you with that. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Be in the chat, make comments, even though it may, we're not live. We still read those comments. We still want to hear from you, and I'll be responding to you. So we look forward to that. Finally, we want to just remind you that the book is still available on the website, asinglemission.com/books. We would love for you to pick up Pray It Forward for women who choose to fight on their knees. If you're making decisions about anything, but particularly relationships, you have a relationship that's poor or that you want to strengthen, this book will help you pray for your beloved so that you could have the healthier, happier marriage or relationship, or your parent, whatever it is. This book will walk you through fasting and praying for your beloved. Many women have great testimonies to share, not just about their beloved, but really more even about how God has changed them. So we'd love for you to pick that book up at asinglemission.com/books. And we would also love for you to check out the playlist. For our book, Pray It Forward. Uh, we would love for you to check that out. It's on this same channel. Just go to playlist and you'll say Pray It Forward Live. And there's like over 100 videos in there of just short little motivational charges and lessons from the Bible that go along with the book. But now we've continued past finishing out the book, just to inspire us to live for Christ daily. That's what we're about here. This is a channel that has the foundation of Christ as the teachings that we put out into the world. We don't teach things that are contrary to what God has to say. We don't bring a guest on who teach things or that are contrary to what God has to say. We want you to learn to live, love, and marry wiser. And true wisdom only comes from God. So we thank you for watching. Please share, please like, please subscribe, please comment so that we can grow this channel and the message for God. We love you. We thank you. And until next time, make choices that will help you live, love, and marry wiser. God bless.